we're sort of the last port of call. And so the family is hoping that we can finally solve this problem that is destroying their family, and we can, but it takes time. I mean, this is not a snap my fingers, wave a magic wand, and it's over. I mean, someone's been sick for 5 years. You cannot fix that in 30 or 90 or even 6 months. It's really a year-long process to get them not only in recovery, but at a place where they can maintain recovery, because that's the key. To get them there and keep them there so they can enjoy the rest of their life and be productive.
Hey there, hot messes. Welcome to Success of a Hot Mess, where we celebrate the art of juggling life's chaos and coming out on top. I'm Stacey Isaacs, your host and resident rock star lawyer, dance mom, and survivor. We're going to dive into candid conversations about conquering challenges, embracing our unique selves, and finding success in the beautiful mess of it all. Hey, hot messers. I am here today with an old friend of mine, also a colleague, Mark Astor. He is the founding partner of Astor Simovich. How you doing today?
I'm good. Are you going to tell him how long we've been friends? You said old friend, but how old is old?
Okay, so Mark and I met at the gym, and I think I was like 23, and I don't want to tell everyone how old I am now, but let's say that was in the 90s. I think it was the late 90s.
I think that it was.
That's crazy. So, yes, we met at the gym. At the time, I think you were working for the prosecutor.
I was.
That's crazy.
You have a good memory. Yeah, I was with the state attorney's office from 94 to 99 in
Right.
Palm Beach. Yep.
So I am happy to have you on today. I think you're a very interesting guy, and your practice of law is very interesting, but I'm going to go back a little bit. Obviously, you were not born here in the U.S.
I was not.
Based upon the charming accent. So tell us where you're from.
I'm originally from the United Kingdom. I came here in 1987 with my family.
Okay. So I always have trouble remembering which is the UK, which is Great Britain. You're from England, right?
I'm from England, so England is part of Great Britain and the United Kingdom.
Wales, right?
So you got Wales, Ireland, Republic of Ireland, Scotland.
Okay. So just out of curiosity, why do you say the UK and not I'm from England?
I don't know, maybe it's a force of habit. I'm a proud Englishman, of course. And when, England's playing some of the other countries in soccer, of course, I'm a big England fan. But I don't know, maybe I just say I'm from the UK. That's a force of habit, right?
Okay. How old were you when you came to...
So now we're going to age ourselves, right? Okay, that's fine. Actually, I was right before my 21st birthday. So I came in December of 87. So I was 20 years and 11 months old.
Oh, so when I met you, you had probably not even been a citizen.
No, I didn't. So here's the interesting bit. I actually worked on a presidential campaign in 2004, and I was not eligible to vote at that time. So here I am. I'm working on a presidential campaign. I took a year off. I went to D.C. It was part of my journey, and I couldn't vote. I think I wasn't eligible to vote till about 2006. So the 2008 presidential election was the first time I was eligible to vote because I became a citizen.
Wow, I never knew that story. But you came to the U.S. for college, correct?
So my family, we'd had a condo here in the early 80s. My father wanted to make a permanent move. So we did that in 87. And by chance, I went to visit a friend up in Ann Arbor, Michigan in the dead of winter. And I said, oh, okay, this is where I'm going to go to school. Because I was in school in England, and I called my family and said, I'm going to school in Ann Arbor, Michigan. And they're like, where's that? I'm like, it's this place up in, near Detroit. So I ended up transferring in from my school in England. I finished up school at the University of Michigan. And then I came down to South Florida, back home, because parents were in Boca.
Where did you go to law school?
I did law school at Nova. And then in 2004, when I was working on that campaign, I did my LLM at American University.
You got that fancy LLM. I was enrolled to get my LLM in estate planning and tax, something like that, at University of Miami. And I remember I got the books and the materials, and I said, oh, hell no, I can't do this. This is too boring. So I never did get the LLM. But I have a story that stands out to me, and tell me if you remember this. We were at the gym, and I think you asked if I had a boyfriend, and I said, yeah, he's here. He's playing basketball, and you're like, point him out. And we looked, and you saw him, you said, he must be really nice.
Yeah, I think back then I was a little more brazen. So I think the fact that you had a boyfriend probably wasn't a deterrent to me to pursue you. So, yeah, that sounds about right.
No, but you're like, yeah, I'm looking at this guy. He must be real nice. That must be.
Well, I think my recollection, Stacey, was that you were considerably better looking than he was, and I wondered how that guy got such a beautiful girl. I mean, we sort of joked when I came in. You really haven't changed much in 25 years.
I appreciate.
I have. You have not.
Well, I have, but you know, I have my tricks. Let's just say that to try to keep up. My husband, who is my law partner, just like your wife is your law partner. My husband's 8 years younger, so I have to do what I can, you know, to not look like an old lady. But moving on, I want to talk about your practice because it is something that, you know, I interview a lot of personal injury lawyers. I know you have the criminal defense, well, prosecutor and criminal defense background, right? And I think
Correct.
some personal injury. But what you're doing now, I find fascinating. So tell us what it is. I know that your law firm helps families that are in crisis, but explain it better than I can.
So our mission is to save families when their loved ones have substance use, mental health disorders, and failed attempts at recovery. So what that really looks like is we're taking calls from typically mums and dads. Sometimes it could be spouses, but it's usually the mum and dad that's calling us. And they have an adult child somewhere in the 25 to 45 age range who has a long history of substance use, mental health, in and out of treatment centers, trips to the emergency room for overdoses. I mean, and they're just done. I mean, the family has been dealing with this for 5, 10, 15 years, and they're really out of options, and they come to us really as the last port of call to try and finally rid the family of this disease because it's infecting the whole family.
Right, but you're attorneys, you're not therapists or interventionists. So why are they calling you?
Okay, so there's really three components to what we do. The first of which is the legal, which is where the law firm pops in, right? There's basically three statutes here in Florida that allow us to not only put somebody into treatment, but keep them there long enough. Because if you go to treatment, 20 times and don't stay long enough, 20 times you're going to relapse. So the goal is to get them there and keep them there. So there are three statutes that we basically operate under. Depending on the case, we might be operating under all three at the same time, which becomes interesting because we're running three different courtrooms. So there's the legal, there's the what I call the law enforcement component. So I've got a retired cop on staff who has a team of investigators because we get a lot of calls for missing people. So sometimes we have to go find them. If I can get a pickup order from a judge, which authorizes the police to go basically get somebody, we will work with law enforcement to get that person and get them into a place of safety because that tends to speed up the process. And sometimes people leave treatment and rather than relying on law enforcement, we'll go find them. So those, my investigator and his team are critical to what we do. And then there's what I call clinical. So really since COVID and the legalization of marijuana, those two things really shifted the work that we do from primary substance use to primary mental illness. So finding the right program, finding something that's clinically appropriate for somebody, especially if they've been in and out of treatment for many years, is critical. So I have a licensed clinical social worker and a forensic psychologist who are part of my team. They're sort of an a la carte option for a family, but they can hire one of them to find the right program and also help to get insurance approved. Because if mom and dad have been paying a premium all these years, well, they want the coverage they've been expecting. So that's important. But all three have to work together because if we can't find somebody or we can't find the right program, then the legal stuff is not going to get it done, right? I mean, otherwise I'm just a lawyer with a piece of paper in my hand. But where do I send this person? So that's important, and finding the right place and getting the person there and keeping them there. I mean, it all works hand in hand.
Is this practice saturated, or is this a very niche thing that you're doing?
So I think the way we do it is very niche. Now, there are other lawyers who do things like the Marchman Act, which is one of the laws we operate under.
Slower. The what act?
Marchman.
Marchman. Okay.
So,
and Baker Act, right?
So we do a lot of work with the Baker Act. So the Baker Act, there's two ways we use the Baker Act. I would say the most, since COVID, when COVID came along, a lot of people started getting sucked into Florida's mental health system. Right, they couldn't get in to see their doctors or their clinicians. They started calling 211, 911. They started showing up at hospitals for things like anxiety and depression. Their medication stopped working. And Florida's mental health system is very draconian and very broken. And once you're in, it's very hard to get out. So I mean, we probably file 100 cases a year to get people out of the Baker Act. But sometimes, if it's used correctly, the Baker Act's a really powerful tool. If you've got somebody who's in immediate crisis, you don't have time to run, draft a petition, run to the court, get a judge to review it, and then have it executed. You need something done now because someone's going to be dead. So if you can call the police, or if you can send a clinician out and initiate a Baker Act, which gets somebody into a critical care facility within an hour or 2 hours, then it's a great tool. But if you get sucked in and nobody knows you're there, which is the problem with the Baker Act, then you have another problem. So we use the Baker Act sometimes to get, we're in Baker Act court to get people out, but we also use it when we need someone really, really quickly into a facility where they can be stabilized. So we're typically using Marchman Act, guardianship, which was typically used for elderly people, but we use it for the kinds of cases that we work on, and then the Baker Act. And occasionally we get somebody arrested in the middle of all this, so my background in criminal really helps. Although I don't take criminal cases anymore, I refer those to another lawyer that I know, like, and trust. So the work is it's dynamic and it's unpredictable. People who have these issues can have a good day and a bad day, a good week and a bad week. And so we deal with a very emotional component. I mean, I know all lawyers do, but we're sort of the last port of call. And so the family is hoping that we can finally solve this problem that is destroying their family, and we can, but it takes time. I mean, this is not a snap my fingers, wave a magic wand, and it's over. I mean, someone's been sick for 5 years. You cannot fix that in 30 or 90 or even 6 months. It's really a year-long process to get them not only in recovery, but at a place where they can maintain recovery, because that's the key. To get them there and keep them there so they can enjoy the rest of their life and be productive.
And I imagine you must have some success or you wouldn't still be in business.
Yeah, the families that work the program have great success. We get great results. The families that cannot make the commitment, they unfortunately continue to suffer. And maybe that's a harsh word, but they are suffering because their loved one actually doesn't think there's anything wrong with them. They think everybody else around them is having a problem. But meanwhile, the parents, the siblings, I mean, they're all
enablers.
Well, sometimes it's an enabler, but what's happening, behavioral health diseases, it's like a metastasizing cancer, and it is slowly eating away and destroying the family unit. It causes parents to get divorced. It causes siblings to move out because they can't stand being around, the brother or the sister. They just can't stand to see him this way. And so it's not just the individual in the center of this who's suffering, it's everybody else around them. Most of the time, the person in the middle of this doesn't even think there's anything wrong with them. That's part of the disease. They're like, there's nothing wrong with me. It's my parents. They need to go to treatment, go see a therapist. Right. We're fine. Meanwhile, they're 30 years old and they have sort of a failure to launch. Nothing's happening in their life because they're run by this disease that's running their brain.
Do you see a lot of fentanyl abuse?
I do. Since the legalization of marijuana, that is, I would say, the predominant drug that we see.
People are really falling from marijuana?
Yes.
Because I never consider that. I know they call it the gateway drug, but I've never really known anyone addicted to marijuana.
Yeah, so when I grew up in England in the 80s, I'm a child of the 80s, you're probably more of a child of the 90s. I had a lot of friends who smoked marijuana, and frankly, I didn't think it was a big deal. So when they went to legalize it here in Florida, I was like, well, it's no big deal. But it is a big deal because the marijuana today is not the marijuana of the 80s. It's considerably more potent, and there's sort of this stigma that because you have a card and that makes it legal that it's okay. But if there's any kind of mental illness in the family, it's like pouring gasoline on a fire.
But to be clear, it is not legal like it is in California where you can just smoke on the street, right? You need a license. Right,
so it's not recreational here yet. That might be changing in November, but it's not that hard to get a doctor to say, oh, well, you've got depression. Oh, here's, right. I'm giving you a prescription. You can go off to the local pharmacy and get this stuff. And then they just start to use it, whether they smoke it, vape it, chew it, whatever it is.
And that is causing the destruction of lives?
Well, so yeah, what happens is that it tends to exacerbate mental illness. We see a lot of schizophrenia, schizoaffective disorders related to the use of marijuana. And it's sometimes hard to decide what comes first, chicken or the egg. But if there is marijuana use, we could normally, if the family calls us Well, we call it triaging the case. We're going to say, well, are they paranoid? Any delusions? And 9 times out of 10, if there's marijuana involved. You just can tell there's a certain consistent pattern of behavior when someone's using this legalized marijuana, and you just know. And a lot of families say, well, it's no big deal. He's got a card. It's a really big deal. And the fact that he has a card makes it worse because that sort of carries the stigma that it's okay to use it. I mean, it's not. I mean, I just had surgery on my arm. The surgeon wrote me a script for Oxycontin. I said, I'll take the pain. I'm not touching that. It's addictive. So, and that's given to me by a surgeon, right? It's with a prescription. It's not okay to use that stuff because it can cause you to become addicted to the stuff.
When I think of substance abuse, I think pain pills, fentanyl. I don't normally, my mind doesn't go to marijuana, so that is eye-opening. I mean, I'm not a user. I'm not throwing shade on anyone who does, but I like to be like, I like to have energy. I don't like to be like a couch potato. In fact, like I said, we met at the gym, which brings me to your hobby that actually, I guess it's another form of income for you, but being a Krav Maga instructor. And for those who don't know what it is, can you tell them?
Yes, I don't think it's ever been a moneymaker for me, but it's been a passion of mine for a long time.
A passion project.
It's a passion project. So Krav Maga is Hebrew for contact combat. It's the system that the IDF teaches its military. It's a form of hand-to-hand combat. And there's no rules, so it's really a mixture of Western boxing, Muay Thai, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and a few other things sprinkled in, depending on
it's more practical, right? It's not like a graceful martial art. It's more like, how do I get this guy off me who's about to attack me? So
it's a lot of martial, very little art. At least the system I trained in, I consider a controlled system of violence. So we teach people how to deal with a potentially violent situation, how to eliminate that threat very quickly. That means you have to be able to, I teach my students, if you're dealing with somebody who's violent, you have to be more violent than them or you will lose. So I teach people how to be extremely violent in an explosive way over a very brief period of time to eliminate a threat.
Even women and children?
Sure. Yeah, because look, there are certain targets on everybody that are vulnerable. I don't care how big and strong you are. If you can strike a guy in the eyes or the throat or the groin, there are just vulnerable targets you can't strengthen in the gym. And what I notice about bigger guys tend to rely on, being big, right? But so they consider it maybe a smaller woman an easy, vulnerable target. But you stick your thumb in a guy's eyes, I don't care how big he is, he'll let go. And if he doesn't, keep pushing. He'll eventually let go unless he wants to lose that eye.
Mark, I really think right now with the incredible rise of anti-Semitism because of what's going on in Israel, you should go to some of these college campuses and teach these kids Krav Maga. It's important. I mean,
so I did a fundraiser for JFS about 6 months ago. I did another fundraiser for the IDF. But unfortunately, we live in a little bit of a bubble here in South Florida. I mean, I grew up in England. I mean, anti-Semitism was out of control back then in the 80s. It's even worse now throughout Europe and even here now because we've allowed it. But there's a little bit of ambivalence, I think, in the Jewish community, even these days, because we live in a bubble here in South Florida because there's a large group of Jewish people. And for the most part, I mean, we live a very comfortable life here. I mean, it's not in our face.
No, but our children who want to go to these Ivy League schools, even University of Michigan,
yep.
It's a scary time. And I know you're recovering from a little injury, but if listeners want to learn Krav Maga, can they reach out to you in a couple
They can, or they can go to Eichmo Krav Maga, which is where I've been training for a long time, which is just down here the road in Pompano.
Okay.
Not far from here.
No, I saw you there. I brought my daughter a couple times.
People don't know how tough you are. If any clients are out there that haven't paid their bill, you do not want to get a collection notice from Stacey.
Lucky for the clients, I only work on contingency, but Armando here, our podcast producer, he caught a little glimpse into how I am when I'm angry. Poor guy.
I'm not going to mess with it. I'm afraid of it personally.
But as far as I've known you, very healthy guy. I don't know that you had any substance abuse issues. So what inspired you to create this practice that you have now?
Oh, that's the great question. God, it's been a long journey for me, Stacey. I left the prosecutor's office in 99. I did defense work for about 10 years. I made a lot more money, but I was really miserable. I got married and divorced It was a very short marriage. I was married and divorced within a year. I was 34 at the time. My ex-wife was 26. So there was a big age difference. And she wanted a party after we got married, and I didn't. She liked to drink, and I didn't. And that just was a combustible situation, and I wasn't mature enough to handle it. And I got divorced, and I didn't know what to do with my life. I had no purpose. Had no focus. God, I tried to do lots of different things other than practice law. But I always say being in the legal profession is like being in the mafia. You know that scene in Godfather 3 when he says, I tried to get out and they pulled me back in? That's what it is to be a lawyer. You're in the mafia, the legal mafia. So so after I got divorced, I took that year off. That was an important year for me. I went back to school. I really wanted to get my LLM. That's where I discovered Krav Maga. I worked in a presidential campaign, but the candidate I was working for lost, so I had to come back to Florida. I worked for a couple more years, and I was completely miserable. I couldn't get anything going professionally. I couldn't get anything going personally. It was just no direction. So after, I think it was in 2010, I ran off to California for 3 years. I took what I had left off the '08 crash. I went to California. I had a good time. I took the bar.
Southern California?
Yep. I was right smack in the middle of Hollywood. On the back, I lived in a building called 1600 Vine, and it backed onto the W Hotel. Party time, right? And that's
For
what
a guy who doesn't like to drink.
Well, I wasn't drinking. I was doing other things.
I didn't know this.
Well, I mean, I like the beautiful ladies. So I dated every girl I could find in Southern California, and I had a good time and had a lot of meaningless relationships.
But what were you supporting yourself on?
Whatever I had left after the '08 crash. So I was there for 3 years. I took the bar there twice, failed it twice. I came back about 11 years ago when I pretty much had run out of money. I took the bar one more time and failed it a third time.
The California bar?
Yeah. I failed it 3 times.
That's surprising. You're a bright guy.
I know. It was surprising to me too, but my friends were like, the universe is trying to tell you something. You're not supposed to be in Florida. You're not supposed to be in California. You're supposed to be in Florida. And then something happened that completely changed my life. So I was just telling my wife this story yesterday. It's so incredible. Out of the blue, I decided to call a friend of mine that I went to law school with, my friend Richard. And I was just BSing with him, wanted to see what he was doing because I had nothing going on. I was doing nothing anyway. He was telling me about he had a traffic ticket practice. And he said to me, have you ever heard of this guy called R. John Robbins? I said, never heard of the guy. He's like, well, he teaches lawyers about business and stuff. He's doing this presentation like next Thursday, and it's in the Gables at 7:30 in the morning. And I'm like, I'm not doing that. I live in Boca. I'll have to get up at like 3 in the morning to get there. I'm not doing it. Anyway, like 3 or 4 days went by, and I don't know why. I had this nagging feeling that I needed to go. So I did, and I met him, and he was talking to these like 20 lawyers about the business side of being a lawyer. They looked at him like he had 3 heads. Now, my father was an entrepreneur. He left school at 14. My mother 16. My father always had businesses. And when he started talking about the business side of being a lawyer, I was like, this is it. This is what I've been looking for. And I spoke to him after, and I begged him for a job. And he hired me. So I spent a year there working for him, learning all about the business side of being a lawyer. So the company is called How to Manage a Small Law Firm. In fact, we're now members of How to Manage a Small Law Firm. They're helping us to restructure the business. But the underlying philosophy of HTM, How to Manage, is that personal growth has to precede financial growth. And that year there completely changed my life. And after a year there, I said, okay, it's time. I'm going to go open up my own business. And he said, I'll help you. What do you want to do? And I said, well, I know this sounds really crazy, but through a large portion of my life, I've been surrounded by people who have issues with drugs and mental illness, and I think that's who I want to help.
And to be clear, not your friend Stacey.
Not my friend Stacey. Not my friend Stacey. And he said, okay, how are you going to do that? And I said, I have no idea, but I'm going to do it anyway. And I started to read online about the Marchman Act.
But did you have any funds to
None.
start?
None. In fact, that year that I worked for him, I was actually, my brother had a condo down on South Beach, and he had a spare room which his daughters used to stay in. So I stayed in there for a year because I couldn't afford to rent anything, and my credit was completely shot anyway, so who was going to rent me an apartment? So I spent a year working for him, and I just said, okay, this is what I'm going to do. And I had a background in criminal work because I knew people in the criminal system have those issues. And I started reading about the Marchman Act, which is a statute that's unique to Florida, and it allows a family to go to court, get a court order, and put a loved one into treatment for up to 90 days. I said,
Is
okay.
this just drug treatment? Could it be alcohol?
Yep, drugs, alcohol, any kind of substance use. And I said, wow, I think I could use that statute. Now, at the time, there were only 2 other lawyers who were doing it. One was a divorce lawyer up in the north end of Palm Beach County. The other one was a guy who sues nursing homes, and he was in Broward. And the guy in Palm Beach didn't go south. The guy in Broward didn't go north. They had this little monopoly. Then I came along, and I started talking about it on social media, and that really pissed them all off. The guy down south sent me a nasty email threatening to shut me down. Well, I have a background in Krav Maga, and if you ask me to step outside, I'm going to be out there before you can get there. So I didn't take that well. So I started out of the library here in Boca because I had no money, and I just started to smile and dial. I mean, I wrote out I had this big spreadsheet of people. I mean, I hadn't lived in Florida for 3 years. I hadn't practiced in close to 5. So I just started calling people, hey, I'm back, And the first case I got was a student athlete. He was a baseball player at a university here in Florida, and him and another baseball player had a rendezvous with a female student, and you can use your imagination what happened, but 2 weeks later she screamed rape. And so there was a serious problem here because, number one, he was going to lose his scholarship. 2, if he was getting kicked out of school, no other schools would ever take him with that kind of a thing on his record. And 3, there was a real possibility that it was going to go criminal, which is a first-degree felony here in Florida, and he spent the rest of his life in prison. So I took that case. Long story short, as I saved his scholarship, the case didn't go criminal, but it was enough for me to get a little tiny office on the corner of Glaze and Federal, where I still have an office where I met my wife. And I spent the first probably 3 months just running around to treatment centers, handing out my business card.
But that guy had nothing to do with
No,
substance.
I took that case. I took criminal cases. I took family law cases.
To pay the bills. I thought you were doing some personal injury.
No, well, so I was partnered with a personal injury lawyer, and we did criminal work together. So I tried to do personal injury. It wasn't for me. So I was taking criminal cases with him. So, the first year was a bit of a struggle, but I was making a few dollars. I could pay my bills. My car didn't get repoed. And 11 months in, I lost my father, so he didn't get to see any of this stuff. So it wasn't a good time. But I met my wife the second year at a networking event, and we worked together really for the next. So we worked together. It was basically 7 years until we hired our first team member, and the business has grown every year, and now we're restructuring it again. And every business has its challenges. COVID was a real challenge for us. We really changed. It changed the kinds of cases we get in, but it also changed the way we handle them. We're pretty much virtual. I have staff all over the country. I have 2 that are in Colombia. And, business is like a child. You got to keep nurturing it, or it just it withers, right? It doesn't grow.
Yeah, we started kind of like you. I wouldn't say we had no money. I had a small severance. I had gotten laid off from an insurance company, but the idea started at a dining room table. We had no cases and no money to market, so it was grassroots, calling people, calling personal injury lawyers, and eventually hiring a consultant. Sounds like sort of what you did, a business consultant, and realizing that a law firm is a business and it has to be treated as such, and none of us. David, my husband, I think had the most of the business background. My other partner, I'm not sure what he studied in college, but my major was Spanish, so I had no business background at all. But we're actually having our 10-year law firm anniversary party tomorrow, so it's pretty exciting.
Are you going to do a whole...
We're doing a whole thing, like a small bat mitzvah, because we felt it merited.
Well, so we're about a year behind you, so we're just going into year 10. So next February will be the end of year 9. So, wow, look at you. That's amazing.
Who knew? Like when I got laid off and I felt like the world was ending, I remember I was 40 and I said, I can't go work for someone else now. I just can't. I can't do like a 9 to 5. I got to go on my own. So necessity is the mother of invention.
Yeah, and I think you really find out what you're made of, right? And I was telling this to my stepson, I was telling him there's 3 ways to get money. You can earn it, you can steal it, or somehow it gets given to you, either a trust fund or the lottery. I said, I don't want to go to jail, so I'm not going to steal it. I don't think I'm going to win the lottery, and I know I don't have a trust fund, so I'll have to do it the old-fashioned way, and that's earn it. And I think that you either have that sort of innate desire and will to go out there and make it happen and hustle, or you don't. And I said to him, you either got it or you don't. And I didn't know that I had it until my father was gone and I had no money and I had no choice. I mean, it would have been easy to go get a job. But I'm like, no, I'm not doing that. You know, I'm better than that. I'm going to go and I'm going to fight and I'm going to do what I can and I'm going to find out what I'm made of.
It's a really great story. You should write a book, actually. I think I love a comeback, you know, and
I think your journey's very similar to mine in a way. I just took a little longer to get going. I mean, I'll be 58 in January.
Well, I never failed a bar. No, just kidding.
You know what they say is the key to success?
No.
Failure.
Okay.
You don't know which way to go until you fail at something. They say Michael Jordan missed 50% of the shots that he took, and he's the greatest basketball player ever to play.
I did hear that same statistic, and I like that. So what's your biggest piece of advice? Let's say there's, it doesn't even have to be a lawyer, someone who wants to start his or her own business, has no money. What should they do?
Just start doing it. Really, try and find people that you can help with the problem that you're trying to solve. You know, it was interesting. I was about 6 months ago, I was talking to a friend of mine and she said she wanted to start a business. And I said, well, okay, when are you starting it? Well, I got to finish the business plan. I said, forget your business plan, throw it in the garbage. Just go find a bunch of people that need your help and do it. You can write your business plan afterwards. We just wrote our business plan about 6 months ago. 8 years in, we finally wrote a business plan. I mean, so find somebody that you can help. Figure out which problem you're trying to solve and go look for those people who need that problem solved and go do it. That's it. It's that simple.
Yeah,
but you got to go find them.
But I think realistically, and even we had to, you know, get a loan from a family member. Like you cannot make anyone know about your services unless there's a little bit of money.
I did it without any money.
How?
I just went out and, like I said, I handed out my business card. I mean, I make a video every single day. When I put it out there, it doesn't cost me a penny, right? I go on Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, and Vimeo. It takes me 10 minutes of my time, and it's out there forever. And that's what I started doing, which is what really ticked the guy off down south, because now everybody was calling about the Marchman Act, and it was like a little secret. Oh, we'll keep it a secret. I just got my clients. He has his clients. Screw you. There's a lot of people out there that need help. We got to talk about this stuff because there's a lot of families we can save, and it's not about you having a monopoly on your business. It's about us helping people. And by the way, there could be 10 Marks out there, and we still wouldn't have enough people to help all these people that have issues.
Right. Yeah, it's a big problem.
It's not a finite problem. There's infinite people that need help. So find those folks that need the problem solved and go help them.
So how can listeners find you if they need help for their family members?
So they can go to the website, which is mentalhealthaddictionlawfirm.com.
mentalhealthaddictionlawfirm.com.
Yep. Or they can call the office. The main number is 561-419-6095. Or just Google me. I mean, I'm all over the internet. Mark G. Astor, Astor.
Awesome. Keep fighting the good fight. I like what you're doing.
I'm so happy that you allowed me to come on and share my mission. And I love what you're doing. I mean, I know that, you know, you're fighting the good fight too. You're helping people, right, who've been injured. That's
what we're all trying to do at the end of the day. But I see your passion for what you're doing, and
well, it saved me.
I love that.
It saved me, and you know, and I was telling my wife yesterday, if I hadn't have made that phone call to my friend Richard and met R. John Robbins, I wouldn't have met my wife because I wouldn't have started my law firm.
Right,
and we wouldn't be sitting here talking about it.
I know, it's crazy, and the guest I had on before you, he had like a similar story. You know, if I didn't do this and wind up here and be at my lowest, I never would have been here. It's about like connecting the dots, and it's all pretty amazing.
Sometimes you got to listen to the universe, and it's hard to be quiet sometimes. But you know, I think I took the Florida bar. I think I studied for 3 weeks full time for the Florida bar, and it's funny because I took a bunch of practice exams before I took the real bar and failed all of them. The only bar exam I ever passed was the one I took on that day in Tampa for the Florida bar, and yet I studied for probably a combined year for that California bar. I got within 1% the last time. I'm like, okay, maybe I'm not supposed to be there.
Yeah,
and I was
wasn't
right.
Meant to be.
I wasn't supposed to be there. I was supposed to be here, so I could build this business, help people, meet my wife.
So speaking of the Florida bar, I guess when I met you, that's when I was studying for it, and the boyfriend that you made fun of, I was like wild about playing Scrabble. In fact, there's my Scrabble sitting over there. But I just love the game, and so he and I would always play when I should have been studying. He said, "Stacey, I don't think you're going to pass the bar, but you could be the world champion of Scrabble." But I did pass the bar, and I guess it was just meant to be.
And that was the end of him.
We still talk sometimes. He's a nice guy. But anyway, thank you, Mark, for coming on, and I wish you continued success.
You too. Thank you for having me, Stacey.
Don't be a stranger. Thanks for tuning in to another episode of Success of a Hot Mess. If you loved what you heard today, be sure to subscribe so you never miss a beat. And hey, sharing is caring. Share this podcast with your friends, family, and anyone who could use a dose of inspiration. Until next time, keep rocking those hot mess moments with style and grace. Cheers.